what do you think? Is BBC is threatening to the globe or only Bharat?
The BBC is the people behind the BBC are most threatened by Bharat. A renaissance in Bharat will have one impact, and that is that we will start to decolonize. When we start to decolonize, we will scrutinize our history. And there is a great movement now re-scrutinizing the history that we have. And in that history, what we will discover are atrocities and human rights abuses which would make the most hardened criminal weep tears of shame. And they do not want that to happen.
Satish ji, you have started a documentary called BBC on Trial.
Ji.
So how succeed you are doing this documentary? How many evidence that you have gained, and how did you gain this documentary, and how succeed you are to doing this documentary?
Ji, the documentary is phase one. There's no point in producing a documentary unless something changes. And so in my mind I thought, what would be a good change? And a good change would be the BBC becoming honest. But that's not going to happen. Bullies do not stop bullying until there's a cost to them. Otherwise they will carry on. And so we thought, how do we engage with this global bully? And the only way to engage with them is to make them realize that if they continue, they will suffer a harm. And that's really what the documentary was setting the groundwork for. But how do we get such a big corporation to bow down and become humble, to become regretful, to express some sort of atonement? The only way to do it is in a court of law. In a court of law, there will be two things that will happen. One, their credibility will be brought into question. When Sonia Gandhi appeared in court and was referred to as the accused, something magical happened. The mystique disappeared. Up until that moment, we were all conditioned to believe, "Ye to hoga hi nahi, this is not possible."
Yes.
And yet it all disappeared. The day the BBC appears in court, their credibility will be questioned globally. That has to happen. Secondly, when the evidence is presented, they'll have to defend their position.
Yes.
And it's indefensible. The only thing left is there a court of law in Bharat which has got the integrity and the, shall we say, confidence on their ability to see justice, which will deliver a verdict? We will find out.
What type of justice that you are looking?
I would like to see the BBC banned in Bharat.
Do you really think BBC will ban in India?
Why not?
How come?
Why not? Why are they even here? You see, behind this, there is a very imperial attitude. And the attitude is what's called the white man's burden. That the white man has the right to go anywhere and do anything. Now, if we think of the global village in the context of the BBC, it's like saying the BBC has the right to go to any house in that village, to poke around in the private affairs of whatever's happening in that house, to then go to all the other houses and tell them what's happening there, and to lie about it with the intention of harming that family in that house. Why? Why does that even have legitimacy? I don't see it has legitimacy at all. And if they were to say freedom of speech, then my answer to them would be very simple. Why was Julian Assange in prison for 5 years without charges? Why isn't RT allowed to broadcast? Why was Republic TV's license withdrawn? You can't have freedom of speech, meaning I can talk but you can't. That's not, that doesn't seem to be quite right to me. And so we've got every right to be able to say to them, we have the evidence that you are not a good faith broadcaster, that your participation and your commentary on the affairs of Bharat are against your own charter standards. And not only that, they cause community cohesion issues within India. Those three characteristics are sufficient, I think, for any court to say, until you do that properly, you're not allowed to broadcast in Bharat. I think that's necessary. I think it's doable.
Does really necessity is there to ban the BCC in Bharat?
Ji,
Why?
you'll have to watch the documentary and see the evidence. But the evidence is there of regime change operations. And there's a regime change operation going on right now. And there has been ever since the documentary on Prime Minister Modi. That was stage one of a regime change operation. And it hasn't stopped.
Okay.
There is a history of colonial European, Euro-Christian colonialism destroying large countries and balkanizing them. And that's going on right now in front of our eyes. And the BBC is an active participant.